Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. I am Queen Cassandra Haynes, and I am glad that you are here. It is Saturday morning, and we are embarking upon our last episode of this book club covering the Watch the Flags book. If you're new to this, we have been covering for the last 9 weeks a book by Dr. Conway Edwards. It's called Watch the Flags. It's a relationship book and tells you about relationships and dating and all the different things we need to be looking for as we venture out into the dating world. So I hope that if this is not your first time, I hope that you have the opportunity to go back and review some of the previous episodes. They're all on YouTube, on the Queen Cassandra Haynes YouTube page, as well as right here on Facebook Live. So again, thank you so much for this morning for joining in. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much as you're coming in. Make sure you say hello this morning. Give me a shout out. Let me know where you're tuning in from on this Saturday morning. We're glad that you are here. Welcome, everybody. We'll give everybody a few moments to jump on. Let the notifications kind of filter through. Good morning, Natalie James. Natalie James, if you look at the top of the post that you joined, click the little link to give StreamYard permission to see your name, okay? Right now, I can see you on my phone, but I can't see you on the actual StreamYard broadcast. So if you would please click give permission StreamYard to see your comments. That way I can recognize you here on the screen this morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome. Today is going to be our conclusion of this book club. And as you can see on the screen, we're talking about conflict today, which is going to be a very interesting topic. And actually, it gave me the opportunity to do some self-development and self-reflection in this topic as well. So again, thank you all so very much for joining. Welcome, everybody, to our Saturday morning book club. We are actually reviewing currently this book called Watch the Flags by Dr. Conway Edwards. It can be purchased on his website, either on his church website. It can be purchased on Amazon. It is an amazing book that as you are venturing out into the dating world, until you are married, and even after you're married, this is a great resource that you want to consult because there's so very much in this book, so many nuggets, so many amazing things that we've discussed over the last 9 weeks. So I want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to go through this book. Make sure you go back on YouTube and check out the previous episodes. We've discussed some amazing things in this book. Good morning, Portia Davis. Thank you so much for being on this morning. Hi, Tarangela James. Thank you so much for being on this morning. Hi, Natalie James. Yes, it worked. Thank you so much. Good morning. Hi, Tamika Austin. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all so very much for joining. I don't take for granted that you all jump on a Saturday morning to say hello and to learn a little bit. It's always helpful for us to kind of glean from each other and actually learn new things. There's nothing wrong with trying to make yourself a little bit better. And when it comes to dating, I don't proclaim to have all the answers, but I do find material and courses and resources to help those of us who are out here in these dating streets. Okay. And this is just one of those resources. Good morning, Miss Kathy Tews. Thank you so very much for joining. Welcome, everybody. So it is Saturday morning, and we are going to be talking today about conflict. And I don't know about you, but I could definitely use some pointers when it comes to conflict and making sure that I know how to manage this, not only in a way that is beneficial for me, but as I'm dating and looking for a future life partner, I need to be able to know how to manage conflict in a way that does not always just end in a not pleasant way. So one thing that I want to talk about in this book today is seeking resolution. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I want to make sure that we have this interactive conversation today around conflict, because as long as you have two different people who came from two different worlds, you're gonna have conflict. Men and women, what do they say? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And truth of the matter is, we just think differently. So there will be things that will happen where you will not always agree with what the person has to say. There will be things that you just won't see eye to eye on. And it's important to be able to deal with the conflict in a way that you both don't leave feeling deflated, feeling unvalued, and feeling like this is not going to work. Okay. So today, what we're going to be exploring again is conflict flags. So the green flags and red flags of conflict and how to manage those things as we venture out into the world. All right. So let me get to it this morning. So no matter how healthy your relationship is, there will be conflict. So let's just go ahead and establish that, okay? So regardless of who you're dealing with, it could be the best person, the God-sent person that you've always been waiting for. Regardless of who they are in this thing, you're going to have some conflict. There will be times where you just will not like them. You will not like what they said. You will not like something they did. There's going to be conflict. So can we just go ahead and agree that as long as there's a man and a woman, there's going to be conflict? Good morning, Miss Vanessa Hollis. Thank you for joining. So there's going to be conflict, okay? As long as there are men and as long as there are women and we're in this thing called relationships, you're going to have conflict. Conflict is what happens when you don't agree on something that is too important to be ignored. Okay, so let's talk about conflict and just really the definition of what we're exploring this morning. So some of us face conflict over very, very small things. So how you roll the toilet paper. Is it rolling off the front? Is it rolling off the back? How you put up the dishes in the dishwasher, how you do things in the car. Do you ride with the signal light on? There are certain things that are just annoying, but they should not be sources of conflict. So can we agree that that conflict truly is those things that are too important to be ignored? So those should be major issues, major things, the way you talk to me, the way you treat me, how we handle certain things in our relationship. Those are truly things that there should be conflict around. There should not be conflict around small little things. And we're going to get into why things appear to be aggravating to us, all of that a little bit later in the conversation. But I want us to just set some ground rules a little bit around conflict, because I know it's very easy in relationships to be petty. Okay, let's just agree. Sometimes men and women both can be petty. And it's very easy for us to be petty when it comes to small things. But today we're talking about conflict and conflict resolution around truly things that cannot be ignored in a relationship. So we don't want to be on the petty bus. We want to be able to handle situations in a mature and appropriate way. And so we're not talking about little small things today. We're going to talk about them, but mainly what this is about today are really big things that cannot be ignored. So if it's done right, conflict can actually grow your relationship. So in this book, he is talking about our ability to manage conflict in a way that it helps you to learn more about yourself and also learn more about the other person when you have issues that show up and result in you having conflict. It says it should be used as an opportunity instead of a barrier. So when conflict happens, you should be able to say, what can I learn from this? What can I learn about them? What did this show me about myself? What happened in this situation where I can use this as an opportunity to grow and to be better, instead of it being a barrier and causing us no longer to like each other and want to be in this relationship. It says they can give you a window into the soul of your soulmate. Okay. So he's talking about in this book that conflict, when you have challenges arise where you all do not see things eye to eye and it's too big to be ignored, that you should use this as an opportunity to actually learn more about the person, actually learn more about yourself, to take a step back and see what are we really arguing about? What is this really that I'm feeling? Why is it that, this happened this way? Use it as an opportunity to grow instead of a barrier to your relationship. So let's dig into it a little bit more. Do your best to tap into the fruit when conflict arises. Okay. So earlier on in the series, we talked about the fruit of the spirit and the fruits of your your spirit. So it's about, love, joy, peace, meekness. Temperance is really important when conflict arises, being able to tolerate, being able to have grace and mercy. So we've got to just decide, if you're in a relationship with this person, let's just go ahead and know that we are on the same team. Okay, so if you have that in your mind, this person is not my enemy, they're not my adversary, this conflict has arisen, but it's time for us to figure out the resolution to it. We are on the same team, we're going to work this out, and so I'm going to handle this in a way that displays the fruits of who I really am. So am I full of joy? Am I full of love? Do I have those emotions toward this person that allows me to see that I don't want to hurt you? I love you. So let me handle this in a way that is not going to be damaging to us later, that we can recover from. You know, some of us, when we get into conflict, we get angry, and we're going to talk about these defense mechanisms in just a moment, but we start lashing out and we say things that we can't recover from, or it's very hard for the person to rebound from. So the first thing you've got to understand is, number one, that there will be conflict. Just know that it's going to happen. And number two is that we're going to handle it in a way that's mature. And I'm going to display to you, regardless of how I feel about what you said, if I truly love you and want to be in this relationship with you, then I should be able to handle this conflict in a way that displays my fruits. Or is it true that my fruits are not positive? Some of us have rotten fruit. We have anger, we have resentment, we have bitterness, we have unresolved issues from the past. And when we get into conflict, all of that starts spewing out of us. So one thing we have to understand is do your best to tap into your real fruits when it's time for conflict, because conflict will happen. Good morning, Ms. Sherry Oliver. Good morning, everybody. Conflict will happen. So when conflict arises, it's your personal responsibility to tap into your fruit. Okay, I've got to know. All right, it's conflict arises. This is going to happen. I know that this is going to happen. There are going to be times where I'm not always going to agree with what the person says, but I can handle this in a way that is not damaging to my relationship. Okay, so what are we going to do? How do we do it? So he says the first red flag is called a conflict imploder or a conflict exploder. Okay, so we're going to talk about conflict imploding and conflict exploding. Okay, one of them, of course, you can tell from the way the words look, is that an imploder is a person who takes the conflict and they just suck it all in. Okay, and then an exploder is a person who takes the conflict and they just push it all out. Okay, so just think about it: internal, external. Just like, you have people that are introverts and extroverts. The same principle when it comes to conflict. You have people that are introverts when it comes to conflict. They take it all in, they deal with it inside, they shut down. We're going to get into all that. And then you have people that are exploders who are just rah, 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 and they don't give you time to think, and they want to answer right now, and they want to handle it right now, and everything is just out in the open. Okay, so we've got to figure out, how do we bring this in the middle to be able to have some conflict resolution when problems arise. Okay, so the first principle of what he's talking about when it comes to conflict has to do with conflict imploding and conflict exploding, which means you have conflict by nature makes us all very uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but I am definitely one of those people that is uncomfortable when it comes to conflict. I don't like it. I would much rather be in love, peace, and harmony. I am just not a person who likes to deal with a lot of conflict. And so actually, in the end of the day, when you're dealing with conflict, you've got to be able to say, you know what? I understand that it's conflict, but I'm going to handle this in an appropriate way. There is someone else who I cannot see your comments. Miss Helen Ogburn, if you do me a favor and you go out to the top of the post and you give us the opportunity to see your comments, I want to make sure that I can recognize everybody this morning that's on. Good morning, Mr. Richard Harley. Thank you also for joining us. So basically, how does this work? So when we talk about conflict exploding and conflict imploding, so I recognize that I am more of a conflict imploder. I am more the person that when conflict comes my way, I have a tendency to take it all in, and I have to figure out how not to shut down and all of that. But we're going to talk about these two principles and how to manage, if you're one or the other, because most of us are either one or the other. Conflict by nature makes us uncomfortable because it forces us to confront our own rough edges. And what we mean by rough edges is, in the book, he talks about that there are rocks at the bottom of a river, and the water and all the rocks are rough. They start off rough. But because of the current and the back and forth motion of the water over them, it smooths the rough edges and causes us to pick up a pebble, which is well-rounded, very smooth, but that is a result of all the turbulence that has happened from the water. So he relates that to conflict, to say that conflict by nature makes you uncomfortable, and it forces you to rub those things off that are not smooth. It forces you to do some self-improvement if you're really going to handle conflict in the right way. So this is probably one of the chapters that hit me the hardest, and I learned the most from as well. And I'm definitely going to share it with you all today. So we know that conflict is going to happen. We've got to be able to handle it in the right way. We're going to do our best to display our fruit of the Spirit when conflict happens. But we just know that conflict is uncomfortable to us all. One thing you need to ask yourself when you're dealing with conflict is, do you find ways to avoid conflict instead of dealing with it because it makes you feel uncomfortable? So if something happens, something said, something is done in your relationship, and you really want to say something, but if you find yourself avoiding it and you don't want to deal with it because it just doesn't feel good, then you got to take a pause, because that means you're in a relationship with someone that you can express yourself with. Or it may be your own hesitation that you have just not dealt with issues from the past and you just don't want to bring it up. But let me just tell you something. Things that you don't bring up begin to fester, and there will be problems later. I'm telling you from experience. So if there's something that's bothering you in a situation, yes, I may communicate it differently. I may need time to think about it and come back to you later. But the best thing for you to do is to go ahead and bring it up, talk about it, have the conflict now so that it doesn't turn into bigger issues later. But some of us, because we've been through so much already in our past, we just want to avoid it, don't deal with it, just brush it off. And that's not the right answer either. You should not avoid the conflict, but you've got to instead learn how to handle the conflict in a way that it's not damaging to your relationship. So how do we do that? So let's talk a little bit about the two different types of personalities that we deal with when it comes to conflict and how we work with that. So the first one, like I mentioned, is an imploder. It's the same concept as an introvert, which means this person absorbs the conflict that comes their way. So when you get ready to talk to them, they're going to immediately probably get quiet. They're not necessarily going to react immediately to what you have to say. They're an imploder, which means that their natural sense of their ability how to deal with conflict is that they shut down, that they've got to take a moment to think about it. They go silent, and mentally and emotionally, typically that person tries to remove themselves from the feeling of the conversation. They may also eventually get up and say, you know what, I'll be back. I need a minute. They may excuse themselves from the conversation. It may, if you're an external person, if you're an exploder, if you're a person that communicates a lot, it may feel like when you deal with conflict with this person that he says like you're talking to a mannequin, okay? You may just not get a reaction, because what happens with a person that's an imploder is they've got to process what you're saying. They have to process the emotion along with it. And most of the time it's a little overwhelming and overloading to them. So their best way to deal with it is to go silent and to emotionally put themselves in a different place. Sometimes they physically need to put themselves in a different place and deal with what happens. Okay. He says that imploders practice avoidance and sometimes become sarcastic with their responses because their way to deal with it is to get you off of me. Okay. So if you're an imploder, you got to know your partner. This is why you have to take your time dating, because you've got to learn this person. And if this person is an imploder or an introvert, or they may be a extrovert, very bubbly, happy, friendly person. And this is one of my things, okay? So I can talk about an imploder because it is so me. So I am very much a people person, friendly, outgoing, all those things. But when it comes to conflict, because of some of my trauma from the past, the first thing I do is try to remove myself emotionally from the pain or the angst of what I'm feeling when that confrontation happens. So with me, I'm normally going to get quiet. I'm going to a different place in myself emotionally. And I occasionally go into the sarcastic mode. And I'm like, well, if that's how you feel about it, then so I get into that sarcasm. So this chapter helped me understand why I'm doing that. It's a defense mechanism. Okay. It's a way for me to immediately respond to the conflict by putting myself in a different place. Okay. So the person that's dealing with me has to understand that is, good morning, y'all. Good morning. That is something that happens with me because of my personality. All right. So I'm an imploder when it comes to conflict. Normally, it's better for me to just avoid it. But if I have to deal with conflict, I go inward to myself. I get quiet. And then if you keep pushing me, I'm going to become sarcastic, and it's not going to help the situation. So what did I learn about myself through reading this chapter? I learned that I have to know who my partner is. Okay. So for instance, if I'm dating a person that's more external, more explosive, then I've got to know, okay, we're just different. We're going to handle this differently, but we understand each other. And the goal is to handle this situation in a way that's not damaging to the other person. Right. So again, I'm just teaching you about the personality conflicts, and then we're going to get into the coping mechanisms or how we deal with it. All right. So the first kind of person is an imploder. They shut down. They don't necessarily want to argue. Very rarely, you're going to get them to go into the screaming, yelling, hollering mode. They're not going to do that with you. It's better for them to just be silent and remove themselves than deal with what you're saying at the time. And again, if you're an external person, it's going to be frustrating because you need a response right now when you're dealing with someone who just simply cannot deal with that and cannot give you what you need at that moment. So it's important to understand that person so you know how to deal with them when it comes to conflict. Okay. So again, an imploder may even become sarcastic because again, all they're looking for is a way out of the conflict. Okay. So if they're not prepared to talk about it and deal with it, they become sarcastic to get you to hush and leave them alone. All right. So you got to know knowledge is power. So when you learn about these things, it's going to help you to deal with a person once you understand their personality type. Now, also the second type of person dealing with conflict is an exploder, which means this person is external and they turn on you real quick as soon as you speak on something they don't like. So they are quick to tell you how they feel about things. And sometimes they will display a lack of maturity in how they deal with what you said, a lack of vulnerability because they don't want to appear weak or not knowing what's going on. And they move into self-defense mode, and it causes you to feel like they're coming against you or attacking you. Okay. So again, this is an extrovert. So people that are external, when it comes to handling conflict, they will go quickly into defense mode, and they will let you know real quick how they feel about it, that you are not going to come at them like that. They see it as immediate as disrespect. We're not going to do this. They go into all of the external reactions to the conflict when you bring up an issue. So this is a person who is an exploder, knowing that it's hard for them to digest what you're saying, especially if you don't come to them in a loving manner, a loving tone. If you just come at them and say, I don't like the way you said this, why are you doing that? That is not going to work very well with a person who's an exploder. Okay. When they're an external person, when it comes to deal with conflict, how you approach them means everything. So just know that and know your person who you're dealing with so you can figure out how to manage this. It also says that a person that's external or exploder usually refuses to accept blame, and they will turn it on you if they're not mature enough to manage their emotions. You must ask yourself, is this person mature enough to even be in this relationship? Okay, so let's talk about it. So if I'm an imploder, I shut down. I got to figure out how to manage my emotions. Okay, and then if you're an exploder, you immediately just go into defense mode and you don't tell me how you feel about it. You see the difference? They are so different. So how do we manage this in a conflict? Because sometimes you will be in a relationship with a person that's the direct opposite of you when it comes to handling conflict. Likewise, if you have two people that are both introverts and everybody shuts down, there's no talking, that's not good. And if you got two people that are external and they explode every time you get into conflict, that's not good. So again, he's talking about how to manage in this chapter that working through conflict is an exercise in self-improvement. So we've got to understand that as mature adults dealing with conflict, because it's going to happen, you're going to be in a situation where there's going to be something you just don't agree on. It is an opportunity for you to see it as self-improvement instead of a barrier and it's something that's going to break us up. Okay. So we've got to know that, number one, know who you're dealing with, know who you are as well. Am I explode? Am I implode? Do I take it in? Do I immediately go into defense mode externally? Know yourself, and then know your person so that you can manage this conflict in a good way. So step one, he says, to how to manage this is consider the conflict itself. Be willing to stop and consider the issue. Try to see the issue through the other person's eyes. What outcome do you want to seek from this interaction? Now, I know this is a book, and I know that when you're in the heat of the moment, this is difficult to do, okay? But knowledge is power. You were up on a Saturday morning listening to this for a reason, because you need this information. So again, what you've got to do is, now that you have this knowledge and you understand that I am handling conflict in a mature way, I've made up my mind that I'm not going to continue to be petty and go in the same cycles I've gone in over and over again. So I'm going to get this knowledge. And to this morning, the most helpful thing I could tell you to do is step one is consider the conflict. Is this even worth arguing about? Is this something that has any merit and cannot be ignored? It is something that's valuable to the relationship. And if it is, I've got to consider what is the real issue behind what's going on. Let me see this through the other person's eyes. Take a moment and consider, do I want this to end up in an argument? Or if I love this person and I'm pursuing them and I want this relationship, what is it that I want to have happen from this conflict? You know, you've got to take a moment as a mature person and ask yourself, is my contribution to this positive or negative? Again, and it's a split moment decision. That's why it's important for us to get this knowledge ahead of time so that we can process this and think about it over the next few weeks. So when conflict arises, you got to go back, pull up this resource and say, okay, now what did I learn? I learned that, first of all, conflict is going to happen. It's up to me to determine how I react to it. And what is my contribution? What do I want to see have happen? If my goal is to continue to be in love with this person, continue to pursue this relationship with this person, then my interaction with them is my decision. I can't blame it on you. And, you know, some of us go into, well, I wouldn't have reacted that way if you wouldn't have came at me. No. In this book, he is teaching us that your reaction is your responsibility. Okay. So personal accountability is important in relationships. It is your accountability. It's your responsibility to say, is my contribution to this interaction going to be positive or negative? And is this something minor? Don't sweat the small stuff. He reminded us there are some things, and remember, conflict should only arise around things that are too important to be ignored. So you should not be having conflict over small stuff, not as a mature adult. Now, if you're in high school and you're just learning, then maybe. But as a mature adult, you should not be having conflict over small things that can be ignored. He is teaching us that if this is something minor, then you should not even be going through this conflict resolution. You must focus on the underlying issue instead of the small offense or trigger. So can we talk about this word trigger? So trigger is a buzzword right now as we're all seeking emotional, mental, and spiritual health. There are certain things that are reminders or triggers to us of past experiences. So therefore, you have to be conscious and know thyself what things cause you to be triggered, and already have your thought process around when somebody mentions something from the past, it just makes me feel some type of way. And I've got to know if my reaction is going to be positive in that moment or if I'm going to be negative in that moment and bring more stress to my relationship by how I react to what the person said. So yes, there are triggers. We are human. We have had experiences. We've been in relationships. We've dealt through divorce. We've dealt with all our childhood issues. And there will be triggers. There will be small things that will happen that will appear to be so big to you because you're seeing it through the lens of your past and your triggers. But we've got to know more about ourselves and how to deal with our internal issues so that we don't put that on the other person to be responsible for our past experiences, because truly those triggers will set you back. So number one, he's saying, ask yourself, is my contribution to this positive or negative? Is this something minor? What is really the underlying issue here that we're arguing about? Because truthfully, somebody may say to you, I see that as disrespect. Well, why do you see it as disrespect? Because I didn't mean it that way. Help me understand where that feeling is coming from so that we can work through it. So you've got to understand too how to react to a person's trigger. You got to say, wait, hold on. That's not what I said. That's not what I meant. Help me see it from your perspective so this doesn't end up in an argument for us. Step 2 is to seek resolution. So he's saying when you have a problem, you got to consider what the issue really is and then ask for resolution. So you're going to seek resolution. The goal of an argument is to have resolution. The goal of a conflict situation is for there be resolution. This is big for me. I don't know about y'all, and I'm interested to see if anybody has any conflict, pointers on this. But this is big for me. Consider the environment that you bring up the issue. Now, if you know that I'm already dealing with some other things at work, or I already got some family issues going on, then that is probably not the best time to bring up what you have an issue with. Because I'm already in the moment of dealing with stress, other situations. That's probably not the best time to get the best reaction from me. Because remember, you know me, I'm already an imploder. I'm going to probably shut down and not give you what you want anyway. So the best thing for you to do is to wait until we're one-on-one, somewhere private, and bring up what you have an issue with. Now, I'm just telling you from my perspective, that's the best way to deal with me. You've got to know you, okay? And then avoid texting issues in the middle of the day. Okay. I love texting. Texting is a great way to communicate until it comes to conflict. Okay. Do not text fight. Text fighting is the worst thing you could ever do. Why? Because you can't hear the person's voice to understand where they're coming from. You can't see their face to read their reactions. It's easy to hide behind a keyboard and say things you don't mean. And then also right now, people take screenshots of everything, and you think maybe you didn't say something. It can be used against you later on. So text fighting is out of the picture with me. I am not going to text fight with anybody. If you have a conflict or you have something that is concerning to you, do not text it to me, because I'm probably not going to respond, and I'm going to wait till I talk to you or see you face to face to manage the situation. So text fighting as an adult is totally inappropriate, in my opinion. Text fighting is the worst thing you want to do to your relationship, because you can't hear the inflection in the person's voice. I could mistake something in text, and then that is not really the way I meant it. I know I have fat finger a lot of things in text messages, and I was like, oh, that is not what I meant to say. So text fighting is absolutely a deal breaker, out of the picture if you're grown, okay? And yes, Tamika, timing matters. Use wisdom and love. Yes, we're going to talk about love and you communicate and with conflict. Absolutely, 100%. So when you're thinking about, this whole situation of texting and conflict, just stay away from the text fighting. Okay. It's not productive. You're not going to get what you want. And then the person has screenshots and you're going to lose your witness later. It's just not worth it. So don't text fight, And the other thing is, avoid doing it in the middle of the workday. If you've got concerns with somebody and Petty Betty's gonna want to text at that moment that you have the issue, but be an adult about the situation and wait until the right time. Another thing is, if they're in a group of people and they're in front of folks, don't text them something crazy and don't confront them in front of everybody. You know, if you're in public and you're in a group of people, and the worst thing you want to do to humiliate someone is to bring up a weakness or a concern that you have in front of a group of people. Again, maturity is important in relationships. And you got to understand that no one wants that. No one appreciates it. The public disrespect and the public confrontations have got to stop. And if you're doing public disrespect, public confrontation, then you're not even mature enough to be in a relationship. And I know this may be hard truth for somebody this morning, but you got to know, just because you saw your mama and your daddy fight in public, just because you see your aunties and your uncles going at it, just because that might have been the sample that you saw growing up, but it is not appropriate to be confronting people and humiliating people in public. It's not right. It is not productive. It is not mature. That means that you have a limited way in dealing with confrontation, and it just is not appropriate. So again, the goal here is resolution and peace. But if you haven't dealt with your inner issues and your childhood trauma, this is going to be difficult for you to do. So I advise you to think about these things when you're dealing with conflict, because this is a major, major issue in relationships that we're talking about today. He says in the book, state the problem clearly, and most of all, like Tamika just said, in love. Admit if you have any responsibility in the matter as well. Okay. So maybe somebody says something. Let's give an example. So maybe someone says something. The first time they said it, you laughed it off and thought it was funny. Maybe you thought it was cute. You went back and thought about it later and you didn't like it, but you didn't correct it. So when it comes up again, it's up to you how you deal with the situation. Okay, so I'm going to go to my partner in love and I'm going to say, you know, you said this, and in the past, I laughed at it. I thought it was a joke, but it keeps coming up. And so it's making me feel this way. And I just want to bring it to your attention. You know, I know that you probably don't realize that it's coming over this way. And I take responsibility for allowing you to say that. And I didn't correct you the first time, but I'm here now asking for you, please not to say that to me anymore, because it makes me feel this way. And that is an appropriate way to address a situation, admit your responsibility in it. And then he says, wait patiently for the response. Because remember, if that person is an internal person, they may need to think about it before they respond to you. Don't immediately just expect them to have the right answer and to go into this long dissertation about how to respond to it. Because again, you've just brought up an issue to them. They've got to have time to process it, digest it, and figure out how to give you a response. Because again, the goal is to respond to you in love and not in a way that's going to be damaging. So you got to know who your partner is. If they're an internal imploding person, you may have to give them a moment to think about their response. And don't think that they didn't hear you, that they're not bothered by what you said, that they're not listening. They're just processing, and it may take them a moment to respond to you. I know a lot of times as women, we want an immediate response. We want to know, you ain't gonna say nothing. Why ain't you saying nothing? Well, truth of the matter is, I may need a moment to just process what you just said to me. And then I got to deal with my emotions about it, because I didn't know that you were hurt by it. And then I got to figure out how I'm going to respond or what I'm going to say to you as a result of what you just told me. So this is why it's important to learn and have these conversations and this information so that you can manage conflict. Because again, it's called conflict resolution. So we want to resolve it and not continue to let it be issues and problems that fester in our relationships later. He also advises us to practice honestly trying to hear the problem before you respond. And I know that this is difficult for especially those of us who are external, and we immediately want to react to what the person is saying. He is challenging us to practice hearing the problem before you respond. Don't take the bait by starting to argue. Come on. We know some people, they love a good old heated argument, and they love good old heated making up. Well, you know what? It's not healthy. It's toxic to love a good argument so you can make up with the person. No, it is toxic behavior. Okay. So listen, don't take the bait and start arguing and get into this whole fight. The goal is resolution, okay? So pump the brakes. If somebody comes at you, they are heated at the moment, they can't see beyond themselves. Somebody in the situation has to be the responsible adult in that moment. Pump the brakes, ask for 10 minutes to stop and think. And if you're the person who brought up the conflict and the person is asking, hey, give me a few minutes, I need a minute, don't keep arguing. If the person is respectful enough to care enough about your feelings to ask for 5 minutes, 10 minutes to take a break, to think about things before, because most likely they're trying to avoid saying something to you that's going to be damaging. Okay, so the person cares enough about you to ask for a break, come back to it later, be level-headed, give them a second, let them go and think, you go and think, and most of all, you might want to say a quick prayer before you come back to the situation. But if a person is asking you for a break, pump the brakes. There is nothing in this world that says we have to have this argument right now. We got to talk about the situation right now, because if you don't, you're not going to fall over and die if we don't have this conversation right now. Okay, so again, relationships require maturity, they require responsibility, they require emotional intelligence, and this is an area where we can improve by just simply hearing the person out first before you respond. And if you need a moment, if you don't agree with what they said and you can't figure out how to intelligently respond, ask for a minute, ask for a break, take a minute, rethink it, come back as a mature adult. Step number 3, make confession the right way. Own up to a fault the right way. Okay. And in the book, he's talking about the 7 A's of confession, y'all. Okay. And I thought this was amazing because there's so many of us that have learned how to be passive aggressive when it's time for us to admit our faults. That when we say, one of the things is, I'm so sorry you felt that way. I'm so sorry you saw you heard what I said that way. True, that is not admitting that you're wrong. We have adopted ways as adults that get us off the hook, but it is not the appropriate way to admit to the person that maybe I was wrong. Okay, so he is encouraging us in the book to own up to our faults the right way. And I'm just going to read to you all the 7 A's of confession. He says, addressing everyone that was involved, anyone who was directly impacted should be included in your apology. Oh gosh. So if you showed out in front of the kids and you went off and you were wrong, this says that you should address everyone that was included in the conflict. The second one says avoid if, but, or maybe in your apology. Okay. It's actually a non-apology. If you said, I heard what you said, but if you felt that way, then, so if you put if and maybe I did approach it the wrong way, that's really, he's saying a non-apology. I'm sorry if you were offended, but it does not help the situation. So you got to think about, okay, am I really apologizing or am I putting this in a sarcastic way in order to avoid conflict? Admit specifically to what you did. Clearly state it was instead of speaking generically. So specifically admit, I am sorry for saying this. I apologize for my actions when you brought this issue to me. Be specific and direct in your apology. He says also apologize by expressing sorrow for the way you affected someone. Show that you have thought about the impact of your actions. So I'm sorry for the thing I said to you. I understand that it made you feel bad. That was not my intention. I am sorry. That is a direct apology, not this, I'm sorry if you were offended by what I said, but I said it because blah, blah, blah. No, you're dismissing the person. He is encouraging you to be an adult and directly apologize. And then he says, accept the consequences. Trust may need to be rebuilt or restitution may need to be made. Be willing to take responsibility for the repercussions of your actions. And then alter your behavior, change it. Don't do it again. Alter your behavior, commit to changing harmful habits that lead to problems. Some of us have harmful habits that lead to problems. And he's saying, alter your behavior. Don't keep doing it if you know that it impacts the person. And some of us have fell into, that's just the way I am. I'm not letting anybody run over me. But all this stuff, that is not how you handle conflict. Is it working for you? No, it's not working for you. You're still out here dating. You're not married. So it's worth the change. And lastly, ask for forgiveness. Your request will give someone the opportunity to forgive, which will bring healing for the both of you. So ask for forgiveness. And most of all, address everyone, avoid deflecting, and admit what you did, accept the consequences, alter your behavior, and then ask for forgiveness. Because remember, at the end of the day, the goal is to work through it because you're both on the same team. So the goal in working through the conflict is to work through it because you're both on the same team. Okay? Moving on, the green flag in all of this is that there is grace and forgiveness in your relationship, that both parties seek peace-filled resolution. Okay, again, remembering that you're on the same team, you're on the same side. You are definitely, I see your comment, Natalie, ouch, that we're all here to learn, that there is no good or wrong answer. We are all here to learn. And remember, the biggest thing is knowing that you are on the same team, that you are working through this. The other person is not your adversary. They are not your enemy. We're on the same team, and that we're looking to work towards peace-filled resolutions. Avoiding the victim mentality in conflict, it does not give you a license to continually be upset and not let it go. Okay, so if somebody apologizes, they are mature enough to come back and say, my apologies, forgive me for what I said, what I did. I didn't mean it the way it came out. I'm sorry. Avoid being the victim. Some of us want to use that as an opportunity. Oh, this is my chance to milk the situation. I'm going to be a victim today because I've been waiting for this moment. No, don't do that. He's saying the offended person must give up the right to be upset at some point when you're seeking resolution. At some point, you've got to say, okay, I forgive. I'm going to let this go and really mean it. Don't just let it go for the moment because the person's in your face. And then later on, you're driving home and you just start stewing over it all over again. No, at some point, if I'm the person that was offended, I've got to be mature enough to say, I'm going to let this go because I want peace and I want resolution. And he encourages us to beware if you have a partner that holds grudges. Because this holding grudges thing is major. If I hold grudges and I am not willing to forgive and it just keeps festering, and then every time we get in a relationship argument or a confrontation, you bringing up what happened last time, you haven't forgiven and you let it keep compounding on top of each other, you are in for problems. So you've got to be that's another thing. Watch if a person holds grudges, because that's an indicator of what they've done in the past. And he says, ask questions about past relationships to see if they have the ability to own their role in the relationship. So when you ask a person, hey, tell me a little bit about what happened in previous marriage. Tell me a little bit what happened. Why are you single? What's going on? If immediately they go into it was always the other person, they make a demon out of the other people. There is no accepting of responsibility, that even though the person might not have been great, I allowed that behavior to happen. I didn't have deal breakers. I didn't have boundaries up. So they just ran all over me, or whatever their responsibility is. Listen for those keywords to see if they're willing to accept responsibility, or if they just always say it was the other person. That means they hold grudges and they have no ownership in what happened in the past. Another red flag. Be kind and compassionate, forgiving one another. So again, the goal of conflict is to end up in a peaceful resolution. So how do you do that? You got to be kind. You got to be nice. You got to be compassionate toward the other person. Because again, we're on the same team. I've chosen you as my person. And so me arguing with you, shutting down on you, exploding on you, that is not the goal. The goal for us is to have a loving, caring relationship. And so I've got to manage my emotions intelligently when it comes to conflict and how I deal with you. Because conflict resolution is a costly endeavor. It's not for the weak. It's easy for us to run from conflict and not deal with it appropriately because it takes time. It's an investment because we choose to seek peace rather than nurse a grudge. It's easy to nurse a grudge and not deal with it and forgive and be mature and move forward and talk about the triggers and why do I feel this way? If you feel like I do something that's bothering you, why? What happened in the past? Help me understand you. It's an investment to do that. And it's much, much easier to just avoid it or not deal with it. Showing forgiveness fully releases an offense so that it is no longer counted as existing, which means I forgive you and I'm not going to keep bringing it up. I'm going to just go on. I've learned from it. We've moved forward from it, and we're going to act. We're going to not only act, but we're going to behave in a way that didn't happen. And this takes time. It takes maturity. It takes all of that to be able to do this. But we're making a vow that we're going to work towards this. Don't try to win every fight. Okay. There's no badge of honor for winning every fight, because eventually your person is going to start just not wanting to deal with you. And who wants that? So don't try to win every fight. There's no badge of honor for winning every fight. Some of us got to have the last word in every situation. That's not of God. And not that we want to, I'm just teaching you that these are principles he's talking about in this book, but I've had to embrace them myself. It's not important to win every fight because I'm on the same team. I'm fighting against my home team. So why should I want to destroy my own team? Redefine what it means to win. Winning is peace. Winning is resolution. Winning is knowing that I understand more about this person, that we grew through this situation and we're mature enough to move past it. Because at resolution, resolve that conflict is going to arise. Screw ups are going to happen, but we can resolve it in a healthy way. We can use these skills. We can use these things we've learned about today. I know now that there is a person that can be an imploder, that can shut down. I know now that this person may be an exploder. They may externally have to express themselves, but we're going to come together and figure out how to healthily deal with this, right, Tarantula? There is not a competition in this. We are on the same team. We're moving toward the same goal. I have no desire to want to win every fight because I understand that I'm not competing against you. We are working on the same team. And at the end of the day, I'm managing conflict because I want to be with you. I've chosen you as my person. I'm going to manage this in a way that is healthy, that is whole, that we are moving forward in this because, again, I've made the decision that you're my person and we're going to work through this in the right way. All right. So that is conflict, and how you see the red flags and how you see the green flags in conflict. That green flag of caring and compassion and forgiving one another, that there is willingness to work through things, that we're not going to just shut down and act like we don't care about each other, that we're going to leave things unresolved and there's no resolution. We're going to have a healthy relationship. And because of that, it requires work from both parties to be able to do so. So that is our conclusion of our book club. So we have had 9 episodes of just really good content from this book. The book itself is only about 112 pages, 120 pages, but it is just filled with nuggets that we've explored over the last few weeks. If you're interested in going back and reviewing some of the content, you actually can do that on the Queen Cassandra Haynes YouTube channel. They will stay there forever and always. Sometimes things disappear from Facebook, but you can always go to the YouTube channel and subscribe and rewatch these episodes if you need a refresher on how to handle certain things. Also, you can follow me on Instagram. We do Queen Bling, which is the entrepreneurial accessory business, now on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And also, if this series, these 9 weeks of teachings have been a success and they have helped you in some way, if you want to sow a seed, you're absolutely able to. And you can do that through Cash App. And you see my Cash App there, Queen Bling Cassandra, if you would like to do that and say, hey, this helped me. I want to sow a little seed to say thank you for your time that you've invested in teaching us these 9 weeks. All right. So hopefully this has been a blessing to you. And I just, I ask that you go back and revisit these things, that you allow these teachings to kind of soak in. You can pull them up on YouTube at any time. Don't waste the pain. Allow yourself to grow. Allow yourself to be more. Allow yourself to be mature, to deal with things as a mature adult. Date with intentionality. Date with knowing that this is someone that I want to play for keeps for. And if I'm playing for keeps with you, then my goal is never to harm you. My goal is never to disrespect you. My goal is never to be that person that is not on the winning team with you, because we're striving to be the winning team. And with God's help, we can absolutely do it. So again, I hope these series have been helpful to you. I hope you have a great, happy Saturday, and we'll see you around. God bless. Bye-bye.